So, had just a bit of problems with YouTube. It wasn't showing me that the stream was live, so we're going to do this as a recap instead. What we're going to talk about tonight is posing. The images that you're going to see are, for the most part, there's one image in here that is not from Adobe Stock. And I want to thank Adobe Stock for their licensing and the ability that I could just go get these things and use them in such a way. This is going to be an interesting set that we have tonight. Now, in a typical posing situation, people get posed the same way that you pose during a competition. That is to say, the body is manipulated in such a way to look its best. Maybe you're doing it to show off your biceps. You're doing your muscular pose, and you want to make sure that you got everything looking at its peak. And it's a frozen moment in time. So let's jump in. As always, you're going to hear me make some comments about what I think of the photo itself. What we have here is a failure to get the woman in the frame. There's no two ways around it. Unless it's cropped, it's way too close to her arm here, and her head's cut off, and she's almost cut at the knees. Not a good look. It is a posed shot. There's no two ways around that. This is an absolutely posed shot. That's not to say there aren't good things about posed shots. There can be. But in this case, it shows off her abs, so you get a good look at the musculature. And it's got good brightness around it, so that's good. But it's a posed shot. Now, one thing I noticed at the Vermont competition was there were very different styles of posing that were being done by the competitors. Some of them were very similar to katas or Tai Chi or Qigong. I'll put some links down so you get a feeling for what those look like. Basically, what it came out to be was this flowing movement from one position to the next. In regular competition photography won't capture that poetry of movement. The reason it can't do that is the photographer is taking a shot. Portrait photographers, when you see photographers taking photographs of models, models have a pattern that's very similar to what you guys do on stage in a bodybuilding competition. That is, they move from position, freeze, position, freeze, position, freeze. Same type of thing um, in a bodybuilding competition. And that gives the photographer the ability to get that frozen picture. And if you work with models, you get their rhythm down fairly quickly. There's a beat to the change of position. It may or may not flow, but there's always that beat. So they'll stay in a position for a couple of beats and then move to the next one. For a photographer, that makes it very easy. But as I watch that movement, the way to capture that is either with a video or with a camera that can shoot multiple frames very quickly. Now, if you remember the old days of cameras, that shutter can be loud and it can be distracting, the last thing you want to have. The mirrorless cameras have the ability to have a non-mechanical shutter. Basically, what it's doing is it's capturing a video and breaking it up. You can think of it that way. It's capturing a stream of images up. What that allows us to do as photographers is get those nuances, get those in between pieces that we would otherwise miss, because unless you're incredibly good, and there are sports photographers out there that have to shoot and get the things off immediately to newspapers or magazines, to the press. But for the most part, trying to make sure that you always capture that perfect moment is going to be extraordinarily difficult without having multiple images being captured at once. So you can get all of the nuance that was there. And the reason I say that is because we look at our next photograph here. It's not a bodybuilding photograph per se. It looks like it was just a straight portrait. And I kind of get the impression that it's a composite. It's not where they were when the picture was taken. But again, just like this photograph of what I can assume is a bikini competitor, considering that it's a flat background and everything else, this looks a lot like a competitor being coached, and they're taking pictures so they can go over it with her. It's that frozen moment thing, and for a lot of people, freezing makes it look like a mannequin and less like a person. You look less alive. I know some people that are absolutely gorgeous, but the pictures that I've seen of them that were posed always make it look less like them. Their life, their vibrance seems to get lost with that still photograph. And here we have another posed photograph. Again, this is one of those photographs that I'm not a fan of because it has very, very little to do with her and a ton to do with the photographer. It's too dark. It doesn't show off her musculature. It's a posed shot. And in a lot of ways, it's a little awkward the way she's got her hands. Probably to bring out the musculature. But again, it's so dark It makes it difficult to see that. You can't see the tattoo. I have no idea what musculature her legs have. It just it's a pose shot, and it's a more what seems to me to be an artistic shot, where the person was playing around more with light than he was trying to capture the subject. Well, let's move on to the type that I like to do. Again, I would like to, if I was shooting a competition, I would have a bunch of photographs of the in between times in the poses, which is why I'm not a competition photographer. I would have so many photographs at the end of a day that it would probably take me a month to go through them all and touch them all up because I would love so many of them. There'd be so many good bits here and there. So when I do a session, it's planned out, and there'll be more on that next week where we talk about planning sessions and what you can expect from me along those lines. But take a look at this photograph. He might have been oiled or he might be working out. Considering the fact that it's a set that's around him, I'm going to figure they oiled him. But having the weights allows him to get a pump up to begin with to increase his muscle size. Plus, you get to see the pump here. But again, cut off, I can't see that leg musculature, which looks very cool. And they cut off the top of his head. Again, what I would consider to be more artistic um, interpretation than it was trying to capture the person. But I like motion. This is a piece before motion. That pretty much looks like it's still on the ground. It might be up just a bit. Not crazy about his body position trying to lift that, but it's a piece of what I would be looking for. And that is wanting to capture more of the motion. And now you notice we've got lights coming down from the top, and his face has a lot of shadow. Um, Off camera, you could put just a white piece, poster board, anything like that, just to kick a little bit more light back up. It'll be a soft light, but it'll kick a little bit more light up onto the face so it doesn't, you can actually be able to see his eyes and not see just a couple of dark holes. Continuing this trend to make dark photographs for some reason. Um, I like this one where he's got a good back musculature. Again, taking pictures of people as they're moving means that you're not frozen in place, putting extra stress on your lats, on your shoulders. You're able to move. Your traps may be bulging out, but they're not going to get damaged or hurt holding yourself in a position while the photographer takes a photograph. Just work out, I'll get the shot. Another dark photograph, very posed, in my opinion. It's a good pose, but again, I can't see his face. With the length of the shorts that he's got on, that's okay because you're probably not going to see his quads anyway. But again, more workout, less posing. Same thing we've got here. It's very dark. I'd have her. I wouldn't. I wouldn't take the photograph while she was in this pose. It seems like it doesn't give her musculature the ability to show itself off. And some things are so dark that we can't even make out the tattoo on her spine, except that it's there. But again, motion, motion, motion is what I'm looking for. Now, here's a collage. I love the second half of it. The first half of it looks posed to me. And the reason I say that is if he was actually hauling all those weights around, this one's still on the ground. But if he was actually hauling all these weights around, you'd expect him to be sweat. You'd expect him to look wet. I get the pose here where they took care of that, probably with glycerin or something similar to make sure that he looked like he'd been working out, which, one way to do it is to actually have the person work out before you start taking the photographs. But he doesn't strike me as working out. He strikes me as posing. Now, the woman over here also not so much, but the thing I like about her side of this, as opposed to his, is it tells a story. You start out with her working out, and then recovering. I like to tell stories. And the reason I like to tell stories is you guys don't get up one morning and look like this. I was going to the gym every single day for several years before COVID, before I ended up working at home more than I was on the road. But you took time to plan out what you were going to do. You then executed on that plan with dedication to make sure that you were going to look the way you do. It takes effort. It takes time. To me, as a photographer for bodybuilders, I have to ensure that that same time and dedication is put into taking the photographs, picking the best photographs, and making sure that these photographs reflect you, that they've been retouched and color graded and everything else that needs to be done to make it look like an awesome magazine cover photograph. So that's what I got for you this week about posing and getting the shot. Next week, we're going to talk about planning. I've got a couple that I've done in the past, planning out a pregnancy shot, and another one that I've got is just an event shoot. So we'll take a look at how I plan those out so you guys can get an idea of what goes into the setup before we even do the shoot. So we talked about what I'd be looking at in the shoot, how I would like to do the shoot. This planning part is the part after we talk about what it is that you want to make sure that we capture. And that's more than your best side or your best body part. It's how you want to look to the world. We make sure that we get that specced out up front. And once we've got that done, Then it's time to plan out the shoot so that there's no stress. We just show up, we take the pictures, then I work on the pictures, show them to you so that you can pick out the best, the ones that you want and what you want them to be uh, on in a book or on wall art or how you want it done. And then you just relax until the artwork shows up. Because there's enough stress in the world without adding to it for something like this. I take care of all of it. So I'll talk to you guys next week when we talk about planning out the shoot.